Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Double Sleeved. I'm really excited to present our first in-house deck profile with my favorite deck, Syn Shenron. I was able to take this deck over the weekend to our Brisbane OCE Fest, where I took 6th place with a record of 5-1. So today I'm going to be going over the deck and the side deck and some of the matchups that I went over and which cards performed really well. Starting off with the leader, when this card attacks, we get to look at the top 5 cards of the deck, add up to 1 Shadow Dragon among them, and then shuffle the deck. And at the end of the turn, we get to choose one of our Shadow Dragons and switch it to active mode, which is really good since we have a lot of blockers in this deck. So we're able to attack with them and then restand them to utilize their block on our opponent's turn. Our Awaken, when your life is at 3 or less, or you have a Unison with a specified cost of 4, we can draw 2 cards, switch 1 energy to active mode, and then flip this card over. On the Awaken side, when this card attacks, we get to draw 1, so losing that top 5 search, but we get the auto of, at the end of the turn, choose all of your Shadow Dragons and switch them to active mode, compared to the 1 that we get on the Unawakened side. And then the Activate main, for 6 yellow energy, we get to play up to 7 Shadow Dragons with different card names from our drop area. This kind of ultimate effect is what makes this deck extremely good. It puts our opponent on the clock and prevents them from pretty much winning the game if we're able to get to 6 energy and resolve this effect. Moving into the deck, we have Syn Shenron. Syn Shenron is a 2-drop counterplay. So we can counterplay the card coming in and it gets played in rest mode. So the counterplay on this does hit Unisons, but also battle cards as well. We have an Activate main for 1 yellow energy. We discard this card from our hand and we can play a 1-drop Shadow Dragon from our deck with its skills negated for the turn. So it gives us a lot more consistency, allows us to thin out our deck and play some of the various 1-drops that we have available to us. The first one being the negative energy 1-star ball. So it's a 1-drop with a permanent. This card can't attack and isn't affected by our opponent's skills. So it makes it extremely difficult for our opponents to remove this card once it hits the field. We have an Activate main for 1 yellow energy. We send this card to the drop area and we're able to play a Syn Shenron with an energy cost between 2 and 4 from our deck or our hand, and then shuffle the deck after we play it. There's a couple of different Syn Shenrons that we can play, but the main one that we want to be playing is this 4-drop here. What this 4-drop does, it's a 19k barrier, and when it gets played, we get to choose one of our opponent's leaders or battle cards with an energy cost of 4 in rest mode. So the leader has to be in rest mode as well, and our opponent can't attack with that card for their next turn. So we're able to lock out leaders and prevent our opponent from drawing a card, or if they've got a pesky 4 or less that we don't want to deal with, we can choose that card and prevent it from attacking the following turn. The chain doesn't stop there though. We do have the 9-drop Syn Shenron. A couple of boys on my locals hate this card more than anything else, but it's an extremely good card. It's a 30k 9 cost. Blocker Revenge with an EX Evolve for 1 yellow energy over a Syn Shenron with an energy cost of 4, which is the one that we just went over. This card has an auto of when your opponent plays a battle card, you may choose that battle card ignoring barrier and negate its skills for the turn. Pretty much shutting out our opponent's skills for the turn on any battle card they play is extremely good, but then when you combine that with a 30k blocker Revenge, it makes this card extremely threatening, and since a lot of the battle cards that we have in this game right now pretty much rely on their skills, it can be extremely difficult to kind of work around this card. It is worth noting that if our opponent's cards have an on-play auto, that will still trigger, but any keywords or activate mains and things like that, for the turn that they're played, they will get negated by this card. This card also has another auto of when it's removed from our battle area by an opponent's skill or KO, we get to draw 2 cards and play a negative energy 1-star ball from the drop area. Allows us to restart the chain and, draw 2 cards, filter out our deck, and we can go up the chain again. The 4-drop Syn Shenron has a similar skill, but only if it's removed by a skill, not if it's KO'd like the 9-drop is. We get to draw 1 card on the 4-drop and then play the negative energy 1-star ball from our drop area. Moving into a bit more of the aggressive cards in the deck, we have the negative energy 2-star ball. Similar permanent to the 1-star ball, this card isn't affected by our opponent's skills, and we have an activate main for 1 yellow energy. We send this card to the drop area, and we can play a Haze Shenron with an energy cost of between 2 and 3 from our deck or our hand, and then shuffle our deck. The Haze Shenron that I generally like to play is this 3-drop here. It is a 15k critical, and when it's played, we get to add a Shadow Dragon with an energy cost of 4 or less from our drop area to our hand, making it extremely good at keeping our hand size still at a decent size. We're not going to be drawing an excessive amount of cards unless our opponent starts removing our 9-drops and things like that, but allows us to keep our hand size relatively decent. We also have the 4-drop Haze Shenron, one of the more popular cards in this deck. A lot of people opt not to play the Haze Shenron chain, but will continue to keep 4 copies of this card within the deck, purely because it has an auto. If your leader is a Shadow Dragon card and you choose one Shadow Dragon card in your hand and discard it, when this card attacks or is used in a combo, you get to choose one of your opponent's battle cards in rest mode with an energy cost greater than their current energy and KO it. It can be extremely good when you have a 0 cost 5k that can KO secret rares and SS3 thwarting, for example, and things like that, where our opponent relies on those cards to put earlier pressure on us. This card also has double strike and 20k like I mentioned before, and an EX evolve over our Haze Shenron with an energy cost of 3, which is the one that we just went over. When a card evolves into this card, we get to switch this card to active mode, and you can't play copies of this card for the turn. That allows us to swing with a 15k critical, evolve, restand, and then get a 20k double strike off the Haze Shenron. Can be extremely efficient at removing unisons if we want to get them off the field, or if we want to continue to put pressure on our opponent, we can get a couple of attacks there. Some of the other Shadow Dragon cards that we play in this deck is Natron and Oceanus. I run 1 copy of Natron. It's a 3-drop 15k, double strike with an EX evolve over a Natron with an energy cost of 2. I'm not playing a Natron with an energy cost of 2, but there are other ways to get this card out. We also have a auto. When your opponent plays a battle card or unison, you may choose that card and switch to rest mode and then negate this skill for the turn. We decide when we want to trigger this auto, which is really good compared to the Poutine or the Trunks currently running around in the Trunks Jeter deck, which means that we can wait until our opponent plays a threat that we don't want to have swing into our board or our leader, and then choose that card and switch to rest mode. We also have Oceanus, which is a 2-drop 9k dual attack, but we run this card for its auto. It's an auto burst 1. When you combo with this card, you get to choose one of your Shadow Dragon cards in your battle area and switch it to active mode. It works extremely well with some of the blockers that we have in this deck to kind of control our opponent's turn and limit the amount of attacks that are going into our leader, which means that we can stay at a high life. We also have another Oceanus card that we do run in this deck, which is the 4-drop 20k barrier blocker. When this card also has an auto of when it attacks, you get to choose one of your opponent's battle cards and switch to rest mode. If the card you switch to rest mode has an energy cost of 2 or less, you get to KO it as well. But what's really good about this card and what adds to the consistency of this deck is the activate main. You burst 1, discard this card from your hand, and you're allowed to look at the top 5 cards of your deck and grab any Shadow Dragon with an energy cost of 8 or less and add it to your hand. And then you can't activate the activate main skills on this card or copies of this card for the turn. Being able to grab an 8 or less Shadow Dragon means we can grab any Shadow Dragon in this deck except for the 9-drop Syn Shenron. When you combine that with the top 5 search of our leader on the unawakened side, it adds to an extremely high level of consistency and allows us to see the pieces that we need. The next Shadow Dragon that we have is Nova. Nova is a 4-drop 15k. It's unique with a permanent. If your leader is a yellow Shadow Dragon card and you have a yellow Shadow Dragon card in play, we get to reduce the energy cost of this card in your hand by 3, making it a 1-drop 15k. We also have an activate main once per turn. We burst 2 cards, switch this card to rest mode, and we're able to play a Shadow Dragon from the drop area with an energy cost of 2 or more, 19,000 power or less, and a character name different from any of the battle cards that we have on the field, with its skills negated from the turn from the drop area. When you have effects that burst, it allows us to fill up the drop area also the Nova Shenron also bursts too, but it allows us to fill up the drop area quite easily, and we can play a wide range of different battle cards from the drop area, like the Haze Shenron, the Syn Shenron if we don't have, well, like all of them, the Haze Shenron if we don't have a Haze Shenron on the field already, Syn Shenron if we don't have a Syn Shenron on the field already, the Ice Shenron since it's the only copy that we play, the Oceanus Shenron if we don't have an Oceanus on the field as well, or the Natron Shenron. It allows us to go a bit more wider than some of the control variants that generally always play this card, but it allows us to go wider and get some of the 15k attackers onto the field, which, you know, can get our Natron Shenron effect live, but also we can play the Haze, attack with a 15k, and then EX Evolve over it to get a 20k double strike. Next we have 3 copies of the 8-drop Omega Shenron. Now, the Omega Shenron is a 30k 8-drop. It's unique. Activate main for 1 yellow energy. We get to choose a mono yellow Shadow Dragon with an energy cost of 4 or less in our battle area, place it in the drop area, draw 1, and then play this card from our hand. We also have an activate main once per turn. If your leader is a yellow Shadow Dragon card and you send 1 mono yellow Shadow Dragon card with an energy cost between 2 and 4 that isn't a Syn Shenron card from your drop area to your warp, we get to add up to 1 card from our life to our hand, and then this card gains the skills of the card that we sent to the warp until the end of our opponent's next turn. We have quite a wide range of skills on our Shadow Dragons, varying from critical to double strike on the Haze Shenron, but dual attack on the Oceanus. But the main one that we want to be using this on is the 4-drop Oceanus to gain the barrier blocker. And then when this card attacks, choose one of your opponent's battle cards, switch to rest mode, and if it's 2 or less, KO it. It allows us to remove things like Dark Power Marseille, and gives us another barrier blocker that we can restand at the end of the turn using our leader. A really good combination of these cards is to play the Nova for 1 if we have another Shadow Dragon on the field, switch Nova to rest mode to use the effect to play something like the Haze or the Ice Shenron that we pitched the first turn, and then attack with a 15k, and then use the 8-drop Omega to send that battle card to the drop area, play the Omega from hand, and then use the activate main to copy the skills of the Oceanus. The next Shadow Dragon that we have is another 8-drop Omega. This one also plays for 1 energy. If you have 3 or more energy and you send 7 mono yellow Shadow Dragons from your drop area to your warp, you can draw 1 card and then play this card from your hand. It's a unique triple striker, which can put an immense amount of pressure on our opponents for just 1 energy, and if they're not expecting it, it can easily close out games for us. This card does work in a bit of an opposite to our leader, where our leader wants to be playing a large amount of Shadow Dragons from the drop area. This card is sending them to the warp, but if you're in a position where you can close out the game with this card, then I always say go for it. But if you're able to play this card quite early and you still think that you're able to get quite a large amount of Shadow Dragons into the drop area by the time you get to 6 energy, then it can be really good to put pressure on our opponents, remove unisons with the triple strike and things like that, but it's something that our opponent has to keep in mind. The secret rare that I'm running for the deck is the 7-drop Syn Shenron promo. It's ultimate deflect blocker. It has a permanent of reducing the energy cost of this card in your hand by 1 for each card in your drop area with an energy cost of 1, and also this card can't be removed from your battle area by your opponent's skills. So we do have quite a different amount of 1-drop cards in the deck that can reduce the energy cost of this card in hand, like the negative energy balls that we are running. But there's an extremely good combination that we can use, since this card is considered a Syn Shenron with the 1-drop negative energy ball. If we have 2 other 1-drop cards in the drop area, we can activate main on this card, send it to the drop area, making it the 3rd 1-drop card that we have, reducing the energy cost of this card in our hand down to 4, which allows us to play it with the negative energy 1-star ball. So being able to play a 35k ultimate deflect blocker for 1 energy is extremely good, but the auto on the secret rare is what makes it extremely efficient as well. When this card activates its blocker skill, we get to switch this card to active mode and it gets minus 5,000 power for the turn. Starts off at 35k. If we block once, it restands and becomes a 30k. If we block twice, it goes down to 25k and restands again. It puts our opponent in a position where they need to spend a lot of cards to try and deal with this, to remove it. Since it can't be removed by skills, you pretty much have to remove it in battle. So you have to spend quite a number of cards to deal with it, or you're just going to continue to give me more blocks. There's quite a lot of times where I'll play this card, spend cards from hand to keep it alive, and continuously block and be able to live out the turn. And more likely than not, I can restart my control and start taking control of the game from there. I feel extremely safe with this card on the field in combination with the 8-drop Omega if I've got the Oceanus under it and the 9-drop Syn Shenron. Adding to the control, I've got 2 copies of Poutine, which is a black battle card with barrier unique. If our leader is yellow, when an opponent's card is switched to rest mode by one of our card's skills, we get to play this card for free from our hand. And we have an auto once per turn. When our opponent plays a battle card using a skill or activates a counter skill, we get to choose up to one of our opponent's battle cards and switch to rest mode. Worth noting that the card that is being played with a skill doesn't necessarily have to be the one that we're resting. We can rest any of our opponent's battle cards. Next, we have the Unison for the deck, Mecha Kabura. It's a 4-drop Unison that works well with our leader by allowing us to awaken on turn 4 if we play this card out. It's a 15k blocker. When this card loses a marker due to an opponent's attack, we can choose one of our opponent's cards and switch it to rest mode, which can trigger things like our Poutine. We have a +1 activate main, draw 1 card, then choose one of our opponent's battle cards ignoring barrier, and that card can't be switched to active mode until the end of our opponent's next turn. So we can start locking down our opponent's battle cards and then tapping down things like their energy using this card's blocker and auto. We have a -4 activate main, choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards, gain control of it, and switch it to active mode, which can be extremely good at stealing our opponent's big battle cards and then closing out the game using their own cards. I ran 2 copies of Freezer Army Reinforcements. For those that don't know, it's a counterattack, negate the attack, and then play a 10,000 power token and it gains blocker for the turn. And we can activate this card for free if we're at 5 or less life by taking a life to our hand instead, and then being able to negate the attack and play the blocker. And I ran 4 copies of Krillin, the super combo from set 11. Pretty standard. It gets 10,000 power if we're at 4 life or less. And we can bottom deck 1 card and then draw 2 cards. Over the day, I played quite a number of different decks. I played Gogeta Xeno in round 1, which was my only loss. Credit to Benny for the immense amount of pressure that he was able to put on with that deck. He knew the matchup very well and was able to close out the game. Round 2, I played Wish Zamasu, which was a kind of another yellow control deck, but it just wasn't able to go up against the control of Syn Shenron, and I was able to win that game quite easily. The third round, I went up against Soul Striker, a blue deck that I was a bit concerned about going into, since it's able to utilize a lot of the great blue cards that blue has available right now, but in combination with my sideboard and my main deck, I was able to close out that game as well. Round 4, I went up against King Piccolo, which is an extremely aggressive deck and one that I was concerned about as well. I opted to go for a more aggressive route against that leader, using a combination of things like the 5-star ball and the Rage Shenron to put pressure on my opponent and close out the game using the 30k triple striker. Round 5, I went up against the green Gotenks deck and was able to use the Vegeta Unison to lock out my opponent and win the game through control. And then round 6, I went up against another King Piccolo, and in that match, I went again with the aggro, but was able to use the control side as well to lock out my opponent. For the sideboard, I've got 1 copy of Frieza Divine Transformation. It's a 5-drop 25k, deflect, double strike blocker. Permanent, this card can't be removed from your battle area by your opponent's skill. And when it gets played, we get to choose all of our opponent's battle cards, switch them to rest mode, and then KO them. And then auto once per turn, when your opponent activates a counter skill, choose 2 of your opponent's cards, switch them to rest mode, and those cards can't be switched to active mode until the end of your opponent's next turn. This card came extremely handy against the Soul Striker that I played, and I was able to lock out his energy from being able to untap them and just limit the amount of things that my opponent was able to do. I was able to sit behind this and the Secret Rare to close out the game. For the red matchup, I took out the Frieza's Army reinforcements and opted for the 2 Flying Nimbus, purely because of the Piccolo Jr. Unison. It's extremely frustrating to negate the attack, play the blocker token, and then have it removed immediately. I went for 1 copy of the Cooler Counter. It can be extremely good to combine this card with the 30k Omega Triple Striker. I did side this card in, but I never resolved it over the 2 days. Jiren was to respect the Android 17. With how defensive blue is right now and how long I want the game to go, I was concerned that someone would drop 17 turning the tide on me, so I had to respect it with the Jiren. Cards that I'd previously played around with in the main deck in the past was the Negative Energy 5-star ball and the Rage Shenron. The 5-star ball you're able to play for 1, and then the Activate main is for free. You send this card to the drop area and you can play the Rage Shenron from your deck or hand. Rage Shenron is a critical 10k. Auto, add 1 card from your life. When this card attacks, you get to plus 5,000 power for the turn. Extremely good in the aggro variant to be able to play this card, attack, get a 15k critical, and then use this card for the 8-drop Omega that we went over previously to be able to copy the skills of the Rage from the drop area, sending it to the Warp, giving this a 30k or 35k if we take the life critical. So it can be extremely difficult for our opponent to get those cards from their life to our hand when we're swinging with multiple crits. A card that performed extremely well over the weekend was the Vegeta Unison. Activate main once per turn, choose this card or one of your battle cards, switch to rest mode, and then you can add a marker onto this card. So often I would play this on 2, switch one of the negative energy balls that I'd played on turn 1 to rest mode, add a marker, and then restand it using my leader's auto. The -1 is what makes this Unison really good. Got a -1 activate main. Your opponent can't attack with battle cards with energy cost greater than their current energy until the end of their next turn. So we're able to lock out things like Gogeta Xeno and the Trunks Xeno decks, but it also came extremely handy against the Gotenks that I played. We also have a -3 activate main. Choose up to one of your opponent's energy, switch it to rest mode, and then this card gains 5,000 power, double strike, and dual attack for the turn. And then I also added the Oceanus in on the Saturday night. So this wasn't in my side event sideboard, but after seeing how much U7 was at the side event, I decided to opt for 2 copies of this card. In hindsight, I probably would cut this for 2 copies of Dragon Thunder that was initially in there. But I decided to go with this. I did side it in for my final match against the King Piccolo, but I never ended up using it. I opted to go for the aggro version, so taking out all of my unisons, and I took out my negates as well, just to opt for the 5,000 combo power. But an extremely good deck, being able to go extremely control or extremely aggressive with some of the sideboard cards. It's a deck that I love playing against, and I hope to take it to another event soon and top another event with it. But let me know in the comments what you think about the deck, if there's anything that you would change. And if you ever want to talk or get a bit more information about Syn Shenron, I'm always happy to talk about it. Like I said, it's my favorite deck. But I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed the deck profile. It would be greatly appreciated if you left a like, a comment, and subscribe to the channel, and checked out some of our future videos as well. And we hope to see you there.